The door doesn't lock, is it?
No.
Wow.
It's okay, it's okay.
Okay. Can we start?
Yeah, we don't.
Okay. Ambassador Jomo President of the Society for International Development, and previously head of the East African Economic Community. Ambassador Mapucho, thank you very much for joining us. You have been involved in regional integration at the East African level. Kwame Nkrumah was very concerned about the possibility of Pan-African economic integration. Perhaps that was too idealistic. What do you see as the major challenges to ensure that regional economic cooperation is conducive to development for the members of that community? And what do you see as the major challenges going forward in trying to ensure this?
I think Kwame Nkrumah, who differed with Mwalimu Julius Nyerere, one of the architects of the East African community, was probably right, with the benefit of hindsight. Seek thee first the political kingdom and the rest will follow. And this is an ongoing debate within the East African community, where supranationality would have been the game changer as far as deepening and widening regional integration is concerned. And President Museveni has been very much at the heart of this particular argument, even though he does not talk so much about Pan-African unity, but he believes that as far as East African integration is concerned, the political dimension to it, and therefore political federation, would be the game changer as far as deepening and widening integration in the region. And having been the Secretary General of the EAC, I could see that a lot of the zero-sum attitudes and mindsets that dampen and hinder deeper and wider integration are very much rooted on sovereignty issues, on political choices at national levels. And therefore, whenever it comes to making decisions, bold decisions about going forward in making regional integration really work for the people of East Africa, not just economically, but also culturally, okay, you find continuously a hindrance, an impediment emerging from the nation-state level, not being prepared to go the whole hog way as far as integration is concerned.
In the recent period, we have seen a resurgence of Pan-African unity, especially among heads of governments, heads of state, unlike the earlier period. And this has been also accompanied by a period of relatively improved growth after a quarter of a century of economic stagnation from the late 1970s. Yet, we also see that, for example, commitments, the Maputo Declaration committed to spend at least 10% of national revenues on agriculture. These commitments have not been realized. What do you see as the major impediments to realizing these kinds of commitments at the national level, which are very important for regional progress?
I think increasingly what one sees, Brenham who has written a book, Every Nation for Itself, and the logic that comes out of this book is that the globalization, instead of really promoting a sense of wider trade and economic links, you see more of countries cocooning themselves. And this is largely because most African countries are really looking at a 5-year spell, the electoral spell. And therefore, the political leaders really just want to achieve the maximum during those 5 years, which they cannot. And therefore, there is, in a sense, a missing larger picture, out of integration. There is a lot of balkanized thinking. That ideal that is driven by the Lagos plan, by the Maputo plan, the role of NEPAD. There is a lot of lip service, to these particular programs. When it comes to implementation, every country is to itself because the leadership feels that it is obliged towards fulfilling the expectations and aspirations of its electorate. And that is only limited to within a 5-year electoral spell. And therefore, unless African leaders are prepared really to think futuristically, and not care about whether they'll be re-elected, 5 years down the line, I think we will see less and less commitment and more symbolic lip service type of acknowledgement to these important integrationist programs like the Maputo or the Lagos Plan.
You speak of balkanization, and that's so true. There are proliferation of sub-regional economic arrangements of one kind or another, overlapping, very often contradictory with one another. Do you see any way of getting out of this very tangled web to make progress?
Absolutely. I mean, I was privileged to be one of the regional economic community leaders to be able to align our minds and our forces and our passions around this very idea, moving away from a balkanized East African community, COMESA, SADC, ECOWAS, and I was able actually to lead an integration movement whereby COMESA, SADC, and EAC were able to join forces into what we described as the tripartite. And we got the heads of state in October 2008 to agree to the creation of this tripartite, to move away from multiplicity, of membership and move towards a free trade area from Cairo to Walvis Bay, okay, really joining COMESA, SADC, and EAC, have a free trade area, move on to a customs union. And President Kikwete, during that October 2008 meeting, actually went forward even to say, why don't we merge COMESA, EAC, and SADC into one regional economic community? So I think there is that kind of an ideal in the minds of some of our political leaders. And I think as far as EAC, SADC, and COMESA, the bureaucratic leadership is very much in favor of this kind of innovation.
As you know, in recent decades, there has been a great deal of rhetoric and emphasis, especially coming from the West, on the whole question of good governance. What the evidence seems to suggest is that developing countries in general, are characterized by less than good performance on good governance indicators, regardless of whether they are growing fast or they are doing very badly in terms of economic stagnation. Yet there is this continued emphasis. Others, however, in more recent times have emphasized developmental governance, a very pragmatic approach to identifying the major constraints or bottlenecks of development. Do you see progress in terms of thinking much more pragmatically in terms of development agenda in Africa? Because Africa, in a sense, is the region where there is greatest coherence. Pan-Africanism is alive. As in Latin America, there's a strong sense of regionalism, very unlike, let us say, Asia, for instance. Do you see some progress in terms of greater regional thinking and mutual reinforcement in trying to develop much more developmental governance in this regard?
I fear that, in my experience, I think one of the drawbacks in the regional integration project, and I'm speaking specifically as far as the Eastern community is concerned, is that you have varying visions of development. Kenya has got its own vision, Tanzania has got its own vision, Uganda, Rwanda, Burundi, I think, is trying now to craft its own vision. And if you look at these visions, the role, for example, of the developmental state, again, varies because of economic ideologies. I don't think there is any sense of a convergence. I mean, we all talk about the market, but I think we talk about the market in different ways. I mean, there are countries that want maybe to create market societies, but others are not very clear. I'm not so sure about my own country. The embracement of the market, what do we really want to create? And under Ujamaa, under Nyerere, we knew that we wanted to create an Ujamaa society, and that really clearly defined what equality, egalitarianism, were all about. Today, the developmental state has collapsed. Okay, and the market seems to be, to be the ruler, of everything. And this really plays out at the regional integration level, where given these varying ideological outlooks about the role of the state, okay, and where do you really delineate, this delicate line between the state and the market, you find that when we sit at the regional integration level, we have different and varying thinking about how we can deepen and widen integration, and it really fuels the zero-sum, attitudes, which to me, seem to be the frustrators, of deeper and wider integration.
Let me conclude with one question on the relationship.
Let me just say one thing also about governance. What we have seen also in the East African community is that in as much as the treaty establishing this community is very, very clear about certain fundamental principles which really bring us, which enjoin us, the shared democratic values and the constitutionalism that we need to respect. I think increasingly you're seeing, like in Uganda, a rather violation of that shared thinking and that shared value about constitutionalism. So there is, in fact, what you would call a democratic deficit. And we're seeing it again cropping up in Burundi, a country that was very much helped by the Eastern community to shape up a new constitutional future for the country that brings, all the forces together, to pursue a new Burundi. And now you're seeing that there is a constitutional crisis where the president wants now to amend the constitution, to go for a third term. And this sends a wrong signal, to the Eastern community. What is it that really enjoins it? What are the shared values? What are the democratic and constitutional, values that we really think can really drive, the integration agenda forward?
Thank you very much, Ambassador Maputo, for joining us today and sharing your thoughts on challenges of regional cooperation and governance.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jomo. Is it okay?
Thank you.